now to talk more about it is DC News Now Sports Director Derek Forrest. Derek, thank you so much for joining us. We want to talk about the impact this has had on athletes, of course. So 2 years ago, the NCAA changed the rules so that players could make money off their name, image, and likeness. How has that changed for the players?
From 2 years ago, I mean, it's changed a tremendous amount, because remember, we had all those talks about some of the lower level athletes coming from poverty-ridden homes and having to deal with paying for tuition and things like that. I think it's increased there, right? Because it's given these players a chance to benefit off of their name, image, and likeness by getting endorsement deals from different companies and different industries around town, right? One of the examples that I use in terms of why it changed, right? I got a chance to cover Lamar Jackson in Louisville for a little bit, obviously with the Baltimore Ravens now. And when he won the Heisman, on the side of the stadium, there was this huge sign congratulating him for winning the Heisman, but taking advantage of his likeness, right? And he's not getting paid for this advertisement, especially with all the revenue that college football brings in and college basketball brings in. So you look at, sure, they're being paid to go to school, meaning they're getting athletic scholarships, right? But they're not seeing anything in return for all of this money that these colleges are bringing in for revenue, NCAA tournaments, all that stuff. There needed to be some reimbursement, I think, for the athletes. And that's what we've seen with this whole NIL over the last 2 years, is athletes getting the chance to make money that way.
And, you know, you've been talking about how it has pretty much made a difference. Talk to us more about that, making a difference, but also maybe even the competition that this holds between athletes.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that, especially within the NCAA tournament, right? When you look at who's in the Final Four, you have two mid-major teams going head-to-head on the men's side of things in Florida Atlantic and South Dakota State. So I think that's impacted that as well, because maybe some of these schools are able to go out and get better talented ball players because they're able to pay them a little bit more on the NIL side. Not the schools in themselves, but other endorsement deals outside of the schools. Obviously, the schools aren't allowed to pay those athletes. That would be illegal. That's one of the rules that comes out of NIL. But you've seen this difference in competitiveness between some of the lower level schools and the higher level schools, and it's kind of meeting some common ground in between.
Yeah, and it would be perceived as unfair, I would think, for some people, at least if you're not as great of an athlete. But what's your take on the rules?
My take is that there really are no rules, which is good and bad. When you look at how NIL is structured, really, each state is allowed to come up with their own rules, and each school is also allowed to come up with their own rules. And that's why you're seeing everything play out in Congress right now, because a lot of these students want some type of regulation. I don't necessarily know if regulation is going to be good or bad, because it depends on what that final rule is. But again, not a lot of rules right now, other than schools themselves cannot be paying the athletes, because then that makes the athletes an employee of the school.
I mean, that just sounds chaotic. For everyone to be able to do whatever they want, what's the standard? How do you even hold everyone to an equal level when you're just trying to play a sport, the same sport?
I don't know how they come to an agreement because of all the different levels you see at the college level, meaning football players, basketball players, right? They're the top tier when you talk about money makers and bringing in all this revenue. And then you have some of the lower level sports, maybe like track and field, not to like diminish what they're doing, but they bring in less money on the TV side. So how do you make it equal level playing field in terms of who's making the amount of money? I don't know how you do that, because you're looking at so many different NCAA schools. You're looking at so many different NCAA athletes. I don't know how they solve that, but that's why they're in Congress now.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up such a great point, even the different sports and even between genders. Male-dominated sports will clearly make more than female-dominated sports. Unfortunately, that's how it's been. How does that all factor in?
But with NIL, we have seen that change as well. There's a set of twins that play for the Miami basketball team who bring in a lot of money in NIL. One of the more popular ones is Olivia Dunn. She's a gymnast at LSU. She's one of the highest earning athletes in NIL. So there's that disparity as well. It's just all about building your brand in this age of social media. And I think as athletes continue to do that, it doesn't really matter if you're male, female, or regardless of what sport you play.